Morrisol is the father, the originator, the creator of a unique art form, as brilliant in color as it is in its conception. Many of us are attracted to his dynamic paintings, but few can truly comprehend the depth of his creations, most of which open themselves to a variety of possible interpretations. It will undoubtedly take considerable time, perhaps even generations, before the importance of his art to us and to his own people becomes more fully understood and recognized.
I only wish to repeat a few words what the person said, for us to be all in here in this environment. I guess that's what I'm saying. I'm just like a real stockbroker, selling peace, environment, which we all need on the earth to stick to our environment. The color expression. Otherwise, let me put it this way. If Toronto was able to accept this color for a building, this building, all these different colors of the building, it would be in a much better vibration. We would be able to cope along with all the environment that's happening. So whenever you're coming here, it's just like you're being sidetracked by a big psychologist. So you're coming here and you get lost. All the problems that you have. Maybe girlfriend you're phone you have, maybe somebody took your dog this morning, whatever it may be. So to solve that problem, which each individual one of us has this great mind for it, to do things for it, sometimes we don't give it a break. So now we give it a break here. So whenever you go out, whatever it is individually, that's it.
Parce que j'en ai juste
Yeah. So, I'm in Amsterdam, and Angela just gave me the lowdown on who Norval was and the situation. And it turns out that they're having this gig down in Paris. That's what the whole thing that Norval was preparing for. And this gig was called the Magicians de la Terre. And the Magicians de la Terre was a big exhibit. It was held in Paris in the fall of '89. It was the bicentennial of the French Revolution. This was a celebration. And the concept behind the exhibit was the recognition that the indigenous artists from all around the world who had been basically pigeonholed into arts and crafts and fine art only came from Western Europe, you know. So this was the embracing of fine art from around the world, and in particular the magicians of the earth. So it was an amazing collection of world-class artists, many of who had never been to Paris before, never exhibited their work in such a high-profile place, including Norval. Norval had exhibits and paintings had gone to Europe. But this was his first trip, and he had painted this beautiful big painting called Cause and Effect. And it's a cosmology story of the Ojibwe people. It's all there, you know. It's 3 panels, 20 feet tall. You know, it depicts the different layers of the Ojibwe universe and the different characters and demigods, and it's a beautiful piece. Now, when the painting got to the gallery in France, the exhibit room that they had him in at the Pompidou, it didn't have the 20-foot wall to put the painting up, so they put 2 panels together, and they moved one of the other panels to the side, so that was the effect. And, you know, and he also had to sign another time, because I mean, a triptych, it was only 1 signature, and when they made it into 2, all of a sudden it was 2 paintings, 2 signatures. You know, the funny story, when the Canadian government minister was at the exhibit and they were looking at the painting, there was a dog print. While he had been painting it on the ground, just Coghlan Arts, the dog, Roxy, a little pit bull dog, loved her very much. She had run over the painting and left a print mark in the gold paint on the top. And the minister, after looking at this amazing painting, you know, beautiful painting, all he saw was the dog print. And he mentioned, he said, "Is that a dog print on your painting?" And I said, "Oh, no," he says, "It's a fucking cosmic dog print." You know, some people want to see the mistake. They scan the entire image looking for that mistake, and in doing so they don't see the image, you know. But just aside, so Norval, you know, he was trying to put his best foot forward, and here was the Western European establishment recognizing that he was a fine artist, and this is what he seeks. You know, this is what we all seek, I guess, right? But in particular, I don't believe that Norval really liked to be pigeonholed, so to speak, as an Indian artist. In his mind, he was a contemporary artist. He chose Kinsman Robinson Gallery because they were a contemporary gallery. This is also Pollock, contemporary art galleries. He was very proud of being the first First Nations artist to exhibit at a museum in Canada, not the National Art Gallery, and you know, respect. So after Norval had his exhibit in Paris, I came back from Europe. He was back already. They did a show up on Granville Street in Vancouver, the Art Emporium, and there was like 17 Marceau paintings. They all sold. It was a very successful show. Unfortunately, it was paintings that Norval had already sold to Bryant, mostly. So, he had just come back from Paris, where he had seen his paintings on the walls in a very respectable gallery, and you know, this was the Phoenix rising again. And the show in Vancouver was again more proof of his imminent success. But here it was at Christmas of 1989, and he was at his home in a small little shack out in the woods, and it wasn't very comfortable. It wasn't certainly not 5-star. And at Christmas Eve, I went over to visit. I'd had a couple of beers and thought I'd pass by and wish old Norval Merry Christmas. And I got there and he was really sad, and it's like Christmas Eve and great year, and what's the problem, Norval? And it turns out that he was Tap City, that Bryant had put him kind of on a limited budget, and as often patrons of artists will do, and he was down, So, like I said, had a few beers, and we got to talking about cause and effect. And I said, well, how much you want for it, brother? And he said that Bryant was going to break it down into 3 different panels and sell them for $15,000 a piece. Now, I at that time happened to have, access at least to some funds. Yes. And I said, okay, no, I'll buy it off you. And I'll buy it off you right now. And I'll give you $50,000. I'll give you an extra $5,000, and I'll give it to you directly. Bryant was a friend of mine, and in his eyes, no doubt, I should have given it to Bryant, and he would have taken his end and then given it to Norval. But I didn't do that. And I didn't do it for a specific reason. As I got to know Norval, I very much liked him, and his concept of having enough money so that he wasn't forced to paint what the market wanted from him. He could paint what he wanted. I thought that was an interesting idea. And I also knew that painting was worth quite a lot of money. So what I did was I called another friend of mine, because I knew he had cash on hand. And I asked him if he could bring me $10,000 cash. So he agreed. Christmas Eve, he packed $10,000 in cash into a briefcase, and he brought it to me. Now that was another one of Norval's mythical characters, a guy who comes with a briefcase full of money. He liked that. And so that night I gave him 10 grand as a deposit for cause and effect. The next day, no, not the next day, the next banking day, I gave him a certified check for another $40,000. And I took the painting. Now, Bryant really had nothing to say about it. He never complained about it. He never said anything to me, and it is what it is. But for Norval, it allowed him to leave from Alder Road, the little shack in the middle of nowhere, getting not very much money for his very beautiful paintings, and he moved to White Rock for the first time. He moved to White Rock several times, being that Norval was not an easy tenant for a landlord. He was still drinking at the time, and not that he went on a big drunk right then, but eventually he did. And there's a memorable story. I was at his house one day in White Rock, and there's a nice view, and his house was always like an unusual museum. It had First Nations shamanistic paraphernalia everywhere, his beautiful art, and also rosewood furniture, and he liked china, and he liked to have a lot of very beautiful things. Much of his money was spent in his life on beautiful things. Anyway, I left that day, and he was sitting painting in his house, and I go home to Fort Langley, and a few hours later, Gabe comes knocking on the door, and Norval has gone crazy. He's really shamanizing, is what he used to call it. He's shamanizing. Anyway, I get back, and he's on the kitchen floor digging through the cupboards looking for anything that resembles alcohol. He's just pulled a bottle out that it contains soap. It's green. He thinks it's aftershave lotion or something. And he's just taken a big chug of it. Seeing me, he turns around and looks up and says, "Carl, I just drank soap." There was little bubbles coming out of his mouth. And I could not believe it. Normally a crazy motherfucker. So me and Gabe pick him up, drag him into the kitchen, and sit him on a couch. Now, I then said to him, "Look, Norval, you're going to drink, let's not drink soap." And I said, "I'll be back in a minute." And I took off. I went to the liquor store. I got 2 bottles of Glenlivet. And came back, and Norval and I sat there for an undetermined period of time and drank those 2 bottles together. It was the only time that Norval and I ever got drunk together. And my recollection of what happened was out the window. I can't remember what the hell went on. Some time later, I remember being dumped unceremoniously out on the road in the middle farm district by Gabe and Paul, fighting with the both of them at the time. Eventually was able to get a cab home. But that was the one and only time that Norval and I got drunk together, and he did $8,000 worth of damage to the home, and he had to move out. So what we did was we took a suite at the Harrison Hot Springs Hotel, and we got all the art supplies, and we dried out Norval for a while out at the Four Seasons. Took him to a doctor. The doctor was pretty straight up. He said, "Look, Norval, if you keep on drinking, you're going to die." And I think that Norval actually listened to him. This was maybe 93 or something. I can't remember the exact time, but it was a serious time, and that was probably the last time I ever saw a Norval drunk. And I knew him right till 2007. when he passed away. Now, he may, over that period of time, have had some small amounts of alcohol, but really he stayed on the straight and narrow, and he was a serious alcoholic. And this is another aspect of Norval and his life. He was a phoenix. His rising was more than once. And Parkinson's may have robbed him of the enjoyment of that last part of his life, but that was the most successful time in his life. He had become much more world famous by then, and he will continue to become more and more world famous because of his work. The work does the work.